welcome to Rising. We are back at it with a fresh show on Friday, and I'm very excited to be joined at the desk today by Inez Stepman, Senior Policy Analyst at the Independent Women's Forum. Welcome, Inez.
Thank you for having me back here.
Yeah, you said having you back. You have a little bit of history with the show, I hear. You've been a panelist several times, obviously, with me, and you also guest hosted a while back?
Yeah, I briefly filled in for Sauger when he was on vacation, and I think at the end of that I was like, you have a tough job, so we'll see how this goes.
Well, I'm glad you were willing to come back and take another bite at the apple with us today. We have a lot to get into, so let's get into it. Ranking member on the House Oversight Committee, Democrat Jamie Raskin, is accusing Oversight Committee Chair James Comer of, quote, misrepresenting his investigation into the Biden family and refusing to share information, including a copy of the Hunter Biden laptop hard drive. This is according to Axios reports. Raskin sent Comer a letter on Thursday accusing him of, quote, going on cable television to tout investigatory steps undertaken in secret or, more disturbingly, which may not have been taken at all, according to Axios.
The letter continued, it has been nearly 3 months since you assumed responsibility of the committee, and in that time, I've grown increasingly alarmed by your efforts to shield information from committee Democrats, including information collected as part of your investigation into members of the president's family.
Yeah. So what do you make of this one? I mean, the claim, I guess, that Raskin is making here is that if they don't disclose some substance of what they are arguing about or what they're investigating, that they're able to stretch this implication that there is some real wrongdoing here, which they haven't been able to substantively prove so far. There's been no smoking gun, and that they can coast on the implication that there was wrongdoing without ever having to prove it, as long as the actual basis of the information remains private. Is that a legitimate concern?
I mean, legitimate, but also, I think, old news. I mean, we had an entire January 6th, committee with no Republicans on it, right? And that there were certainly leaks out of that and representations made in the media before evidence came before. So I think this is actually politics as usual, and it's fine to lament that that's the case. Obviously, everybody on the committee should have access to everything. We should be able to trust that our members of Congress are not leaking stuff to the media selectively or not going on media shows to make false statements about what there is actually before them. That being said, I do think that that's sort of water under the bridge at this point. This is politics as usual.
I mean, it is an interesting posture for Democrats to take, to accusing folks of having a politicized investigation of someone in the midst of the Donald Trump indictment, which even many people who are left-leaning, who are liberals, are questioning the legal sufficiency of the claims, at least the ones that are coming out of New York. And while I think there might have been a stronger argument that Republicans are politicizing this, and certainly Democrats have been arguing that Republicans have been politicizing the Hunter Biden laptop story since time immemorial. I wonder, does it take on a different color against the backdrop of a district attorney who ran on "I'm going to get Trump," getting Trump and having an unprecedented indictment of not just a former president of the United States of America happening in the background, but someone who was a leading candidate in the race for the Republican primary?
Right, their domestic political opposition. Yeah, I mean, I think those are two different things, though, in part because Congress is supposed to be politicized, right? To the extent that they are overly political and are not sharing with each other, like, there is a remedy for that. We vote for them, right? If the American people don't like the games that they're playing, if they become tired of the YouTube clips and hearings instead of substantive investigations, the American people do in fact have a remedy for that, right? Whereas when the politicization gets into the rule of law, I think that's a much, much more dangerous precedent to break. And frankly, most Americans in this country, and I don't think this is exclusively on the right, and I think actually there's a bit of horseshoe effect here. Most Americans think, I think at this point, that the idea of equal justice under the law applied regardless to whether your politics are in favor or out of favor with the DOJ, with the current president, that seems like an idea that's very, very much under attack today.
Well, according to Axios, Comer has claimed he's talking to 4 different people associated with the, quote, Biden influence peddling. Raskin's letter also claims that Democratic committee staff asked Republicans about statements in the letter and were told no new witness information had actually been provided. And according to the letter, the statements only referred to 2 individuals, Hunter Biden's business associate, Eric Schwerin, as well as President Biden's former aide, Kathy Chung.
In response to the letter, Comer said, quote, multiple individuals have approached the Oversight Committee as whistleblowers with desire to share information confidentially. It should be no surprise that whistleblowers do not trust.
Yeah, so I mean, this argument about whistleblowers and wanting to protect their identity, credible, or are the same people that we've been talking about this whole time? There are no real true whistleblowers, and this again is just an excuse that Republicans are using not to be more forthcoming about what they're actually investigating.
I mean, again, if you can flip this right back around and talk about the whistleblowers in the intelligence community who are coming to different congressional committees, right? I think there's a lot of games behind the scenes in terms of leaking out identity, and I think it's understandable that reality is being accepted by players of both sides, and therefore they're holding a lot of this information close to the vest, right? We've seen this in past congressional investigations. There was the skiff room, the famous skiff room, right? To try to keep some of this from leaking, but the problem is, again, this is politics. I have much less of a problem with it happening in the venue that's appropriate to politics than I have this kind of leaking environment, whistleblower environment, for example, on the Supreme Court, right? So I think there are places that are appropriate. Politics has always been a knuckle sort of punching game. I'm not surprised by that, but what is shocking to me is moving that political venue into places like the courtroom, which is wholly inappropriate and unprecedented.
So I presume you're alluding to this ProPublica story. I believe we covered it on the show. Neither of us was here yesterday, but covered it on the show yesterday, relating to Clarence Thomas receiving untold value out of these trips and gifts from a billionaire, one singular billionaire, and what influence that might have on the outcome of his decisions in the Supreme Court. It does really feel like everywhere you look, there's some kind of corruption going on. And I hear you making the distinction between a kind of partisanship in politics and a partisanship in the legal context, where there is at least an expectation that people are making decisions based on something other than their personal beliefs and partisanships. But given that everywhere you look, it seems to be the case, at a certain point, is there a kind of diminishment of the political relevance, of the ability for one party or another to capitalize on the perception that the other side is bad? When it seems to be awash, especially I think for so many average Americans who are looking at all of this and saying, yeah, you're all corrupt. What do you want me to do about it? Is this going to end up having the effect of basically just suppressing the vote? Or is there going to be a reshuffling here, you think, of people feeling like one party or the other is more trustworthy? And that's a battle that Democrats and Republicans should be having right now. Oh, the other guy's fraudulent. The other guy's corrupt.
I actually think this was Donald Trump's greatest strength in a sense, like as a candidate, was the moment back in 2016 when he was like, of course the whole thing is corrupt. I was there because I tried to ding him on the idea that he didn't pay a lot of taxes, that there was a lot of influence behind the scenes from donors. He was like, of course there is. Of course I tried to influence people. Of course I tried not to pay my taxes. That's how the system works. I alone can solve, right? We can debate that last part, right? But I do think that's the strongest argument he makes, and to the extent that this feeling that the game is rigged and the corruption is endemic to every one of our institutions, to the extent that proliferates in the American people, and I think it rightly has. I mean, every one of our institutions basically has shown itself to be wholly politicized, corrupt, everything that you can name it. I think that's a fair assessment, and then people start to look for candidates who are outsiders. So I think that helps Donald Trump. I also think it helps some folks on the left. I think the people who have the hardest time defending themselves right now are people who are not acknowledging the deeper rot in the institutions.
Yeah, establishment politicians beware in that case. All right, we'll have more Rising for you right after this. Stick around.